continue our engagement with the Honorable Raphael Trotman, Minister of Governance, who also has responsibilities for the natural resources sector. We will be talking about mining and the environment. Minister, thank you very much for sparing us the time. Um, Mining is big business in Guyana. Are you satisfied with the way this is done currently?
I don't think that anyone can say that mining is being conducted in a satisfactory manner. I have bemoaned the fact maybe too much or too often of the perception of mining. Yes, it's big money, but also there's a sense of uh, a wantonness where money buys influence, it buys you power. I speak about the attendant ills of mining, which bother me immensely. The degradation to the land, people possessing guns and prostitution, drugs. So, mining is a worthy occupation or it's a worthy endeavor, but I believe that certainly it is not being carried out in the best ways possible. And so, government is not satisfied. I think, especially the president, he has spoken about uh, perception of corruption. He's spoken about the way the land is left in a devastated manner after mining. He's spoken about the pollution. He's spoken about the mindset that money gets you everything and everywhere. And so that's on the one hand of not being satisfied. But on the other hand, we're taking steps to bring order to, as I said, what is a good industry that's been around for over 100 years in Guyana, and we have every intention of continuing mining, but we believe that it has to be regulated far better than it has been in the past.
Minister, in terms of compliance with the various regulations within the sector, maybe a lack of compliance is resulting in the ad hoc manner, for the want of a better word, in which it is being done. How are we looking in terms of compliance? Are there efforts to ensure that this subsector is done within that accepted regulatory framework?
Well, compliance remains an issue. We have laws, but if they're not being enforced, we're in trouble. So a lot of our attention now is actually at the Guyana Gold Board level. We're looking at the loopholes that lead to corruption and to smuggling of gold. At the Guyana Geology and Mines level, it is those who have permits to mine. People who have permits just to explore have begun mining. We have illegal mining. So a lot of emphasis is going to be placed on the enforcement of available laws, whilst at the same time reviewing these laws to see how they can be strengthened. We work in partnership with the Guyana Gold and Diamond Mines Association, the Guyana Women Miners Organization, of course, and with other interest groups. Even the Guyana Human Rights Association and others have a vested interest. So it's a wide gamut of players that have to be factored in, but regulation is key to bringing the order.
Can we see the role of rangers and environmental officers being more intensified or more effective in such a process?
Well, certainly I think you've hit the nail on the head. At a very basic point, or the first point would be the mining officers who are on the ground in a particular mining district. All kinds of good and bad reports come out. We want to make sure that mining officers are given the respect that they deserve, that they are allowed to function within the meaning of the act to enforce the laws, and carry themselves with respect. So you don't command respect unless you are deserving of that respect. So we're putting emphasis on that. In terms of environmental protection, we're currently reviewing the laws to make enforcement of the environmental issues possible. As it is now, environmental officers lack certain powers to actually enforce the law. So we are actually reviewing the laws to make them, to give them stronger powers.
What about efforts to tackle pollution in this whole concept of avoiding the environmental degradation at
Mhm.
this. Are there efforts at your end in terms or emphasis rather to especially river dredging and case in point Rockstone? Are there efforts to tackle this kind
Well,
of
this
pollution?
comes up often, particularly in the hinterland areas. We speak about a green economy, and therefore we've got to see the environment as a friend, as the provider of our livelihood. So by destroying it, by disrespecting it, by degrading it, we're not helping ourselves. So we'd like to see mining and foresting that is sustainable and respectful of the environment. So as I said, as we get reports, we've begun work with the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, we work with EPA, we're working with uh, the Ministry of Communities and others to ensure that there's a cohesiveness to our work, because it's not good enough to have GGMC or my department only reacting to something when we don't know what is happening at the level of Indigenous Peoples Affairs or even the Ministry of Tourism, because as you mentioned, Rockstone, it has become famous for its annual fish festival, sport fishing, and so if it is that we're polluting the waters there or we're allowing mining there, we are really making a mockery of our tourism effort. So everything has to be seen as part of a chain, a continuous chain, and we all have a role to play to ensure that our link, that link is strong, it's wholesome, that we are therefore not um, causing corrosion to the other links because of our own action. So um, yes, but what this requires is more interagency collaboration and cooperation.
Which is something that
Is
you're
ongoing, yes.
Melissa, can you give us a sense of what's going on in the mining sector currently? And this is in line with the scene on the international level, at the international
Well, mining is a bit depressed right now because globally the price of gold has fallen, and so we've seen less people involved in mining. On the other hand, there is still sufficient mining going on. The heavy rains we had between May and August kind of affected some, which led to some mining deaths, unfortunate accidents, which um, I would like to speak about. But we are continuing to monitor to ensure that, as I said, there's respect for laws. We're empowering the mines officers. We're working with the miners themselves to provide better education, to let them know what requirements there are. We're looking at a menu of measures that we're going to put in place. For example, ensuring that what we call the GMs, the managers of mining operations, have a level of certification. You just don't call yourself a GM or find yourself appointed as a GM without. It's almost like a minibus driver or conductor. You must be certified by the GGMC to hold that position. What first aid facilities are available in a mining camp, for example, to address an injury that arises from a caved in pit, to malaria, to a wound on the hand, a person gets cut. Um, what managerial skills and abilities do you have to be GM? Um, do you have a police record? Is it a bad one? So we not be, these are things that we're looking to introduce, but we recognize that as government you just can't go and say this is the new standard. That standard has to be one that we work out and agree on with the stakeholders. So mining is mining, it has a culture to it. We can't change that culture or shouldn't try to change it, but we've got to manage it better, and I think much more could be done. And Ghana, as I said, has been involved in mining for gold and diamonds for hundreds of years. The stories of the pork knocker, I don't think we should ever try to banish. That is the core of what we're doing, and so um, the thrust of this department now is to take care as well of small miners. We get too many complaints of small miners not having enough available lands, and even when they're given lands, those lands are not capable of producing. Or there's another one which is called landlordism. When these small miners find some gold, all of a sudden the owner of the land, who's permitted them to go there turns up and says, I want you off. So we've got to take care of the small, the medium scale, and the large miners. We've recently had the opening of the Aurora Gold Mines mine, which the president attended that opening. That's major. There are over 500 persons directly involved, which means that you have communities that are going to be impacted positively. Troy Resources is about to have a similar operation unveiled before the end of the year, and there are a few others in the pipeline. So there's much happening in mining. Unfortunately, as I said, because of the diminished price for gold internationally or globally, it is not as vibrant as it was, say, 3 years ago. But now is the best time when there's an off season, so to speak, to put things in place so that when it returns to its vibrancy, we have systems in place, we can monitor better, we can respond better.
Minister, can you shed some light on the recently signed mining agreement? It is an agreement that was very receptive, and the stakeholders are very appreciative. I saw an advertisement in the papers thanking the administration for promises kept. Can you shed some light on this agreement?
Well, yes, meetings were held with the Guyana Gold and Diamond Mines Association and the Women Miners Organization. The president met with both and kept his word that what had been committed and promised during campaigns would be honored once in government. And so you saw a reflection of that came firstly in the budget speech by the Minister of Finance, and then thereafter those promises that were made by the president, articulated by the Minister of Finance, were carried through by an agreement that was entered into with the GGDMA. So it allows large and medium scale and small miners to benefit from concessions for engines and parts and fuel and so forth.
On the issue of concessions, those that would have been issued, obviously, when the now government was in opposition by the former administration, there were some concerns, especially with regard those that are within Amerindian lands. They're saying that these were exploited, and to a greater extent, the people were exploited. Are we going to see maybe a review? Are we going to see a relook at the way these concessions are handed out? That sort of thing. Are these plans in the pipelines?
Well, I won't want us to go back and try to unearth and to uncover everything, and as if we're looking for some bogeyman or some corrupt transaction in every case. But as I said, we've been getting complaints. I think there was a recently highly publicized complaint by one mining community that said that they were duped, where they felt that they were given titles, and it turns out that the titles were not valid or invalid, and therefore miners were turning up. So this is why a meeting is planned between the Department of Natural Resources and the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, so that we have one government policy on Amerindian lands, mining, foresting, and even as you unveil new tongues and new townships, we've got to have one plan, not several little plans around. So we're not going, as I said, to go and look at everything with a suspicious eye to just say that all concessions were given out in a wrong way or corrupt way. But certainly as we are responding to complaints, we will do so. But in the meantime, we are making preparations to have a national policy or a review of the national policy on concessions. It should be noted that no mining rights are to be given out in what are termed Amerindian title lands. However, there's nothing stopping Amerindians themselves from doing mining within those lands. Or, as has been the case, they are free to enter into bilateral arrangements or agreements with persons or companies to do mining on their lands, but the GGMC is not allowed to give out or permits either to prospect or to mine in any such area without consent of the Amerindian community.
Can we talk a little bit about building capacity for the officials in the mining sector? There were talks about a mining school. Can you tell us, maybe give us an update?
Well, the mining school has started, and we are currently, in fact, discussing ways of building that capacity. And as I said, we're talking, for example, with about training and certification for miners and general managers, and so the idea is that the mining school will provide that certification. That before you have your dredge license, that you submit to a one-day seminar on safety, on labor relations, and sometimes it's about payment of salaries and the manner in which they're to be paid, the keeping of your books to ensure that they comply with the law, ensuring that again, I return to safety, that you do not mine in an unsafe way, or if you see these four signs in terms of heavy rainfall coupled with um, too steep a wall face, you suspend mining, that you either send for a mines officer, an engineer, or you desist when you're told to desist. So the mining school has a very pivotal and critical role to play in the new policies that we are examining, and we will hopefully formulate before the end of the year.
Minister, with regard the mining report, which was recently issued by that team that was looking into the sector, can you give us some of the high points and maybe some recommendations, and tell us whether the administration is going to examine the possibilities of practical implementation of these?
Mm. Well, yes, the report was a very telling one. It looked at not just the most recent incidences of accidents which led to death, but it took the opportunity to review mining across the board. It was not very critical, and I think it was an honest, frank report which we had to accept, that both at the regulatory side, which is the GGMC, as well as the side of the miners themselves, there's much room for improvement. And so we've started the process. We've shared a report with the GGMC officials, we've shared it with the Guyana Gold and Diamond Mines Association, we've shared it with the Guyana Women Miners Organization, and we have shared it recently with the Ministry of Social Protection. And so what we're doing now is getting feedback from them, and we're meeting again at the middle of October to review the findings and to look to see what practical solutions can be implemented. Some are short term, some will take a longer time, but certainly the role of the mines officer becomes critical, because he or she is the first person on the scene in the mining district who must be able to go out and to check and to be able to say this is a potential danger or flashpoint. So we've started the process, and the reaction from both, as I said, the regulatory side, which is GGMC, and from the stakeholder side, which is the miners, has been good. I think everyone accepts that there have been some failings and shortcomings in the past, but we're not here to just dwell on those. We're here really to look forward to see how we can fix those failings and shortcomings. So the process has started, and there's a meeting slated for middle October, where we hope to come up with an agreeable menu of measures and a roadmap how we're going to go forward.
Minister, in terms of expansion of the mining sector, is there or has there been a national survey in terms
we haven't had a recent survey, but this is something that the administration will no doubt be conducted soon. There's quite a bit of surveying being done of Guyana by satellite and by other geological, either both our own GGMC and others. So this is something that's likely to come in 2016, where we take a relook at our land use policy, what resources are available. Again, I go back to the fact that we are unveiling 4 new tongues. What resources are embedded in those tongues? What can those tongues rely on to sustain themselves, and so forth. So that survey will be done again, but I don't think it will be done strictly from a point of view of what natural resources you have. I think it will be done more from a socio-political angle. In other words, new townships, what comes under them, how do they administer them, how do they extract, I won't use the word exploit, but extract and use for their development in a sustainable manner. So yes, a survey is a must. but that more than likely will be in 2016.
Are we looking at value-added production in the mining sector?
Well, of course, yes, I know that the Minister of Business in particular is very keen on having value added. We we mine for gold, we smelt it, and we send it out to Guyana, and then much of it comes back in the jewelry we buy. And so I believe that at the Minister of Business end, this is something that he is very keen on, and I have received proposals myself from entities that would like to have both diamond cutting establishments here for export, as well as jewelry manufacturing for export. So it's something that I believe that the Ministry of Business will take the lead on.
If we are to look at general legislation, regulations, those that are not so heavy, not so strong on enforcement and talking about various activities, right or wrong, that's done within the sector. Are we looking at overall a re-examination, a review of legislation to bring mining in line with what the government's vision really is?
Yeah, well, you're right. It's unavoidable for us to talk about alignment of vision without a review of legislation. So the legislation governing mining itself is under review, and there are some regulations that have been around for a few years which have not been enacted, and so we've started the process of dusting those off and preparing them for enactment, of course, in consultation with the miners themselves. At the EPA end, we are reviewing the regulations to strengthen them, particularly in the enforcement side of things. And there's the other side that we've not mentioned at all, but that's oil and gas. We recently had a team from the Commonwealth Secretariat in London visit, and so they are reviewing our petroleum legislation to see how it can be strengthened to prepare us for the wave of oil production that is expected soon. So that is a project that is ongoing.
As the minister with responsibilities for the natural resources sector, taking into considerations government's 2020 vision and beyond, where do you see the mining sector, or how would you like the mining sector to shape up?
Well, just 3 years ago, mining gold in particular was our #1 foreign exchange earner. And because of the drop in price, it is not there right now, but I see it returning. And so mining has played and will continue to play a critical role in Ghana's development. We just want to make sure that as we mine, we don't destroy, and that we ensure that there is reforestation rather, that we replant, that we cover back lands that have been excavated, that we get rid of the use of mercury, which is an ongoing process in the mining processes, that we train a new set of miners, not just as spoke knockers to go out with a batel and a spade, but how to really benefit from what we have. We'd like to attract larger mining companies like the ones we have. We have a Canadian and a major Australian company here. We'd like to have other interests involved, and those, of course, must respect our laws, respect our labor laws, respect our fiscal and tax laws, and so forth. And so mining will be one of the main pillars upon which Ghana's economic development will rest, no doubt in the future.
Thank you, Minister.
Okay, thank you very much.